You can expect dramatic overreactions to nearly everything Trump says for the next 9 months or so, and his recent comments on NATO are a perfect example. Trump has long been critical of the alliance created after the Second World War. Trump's position on NATO as another global coalition which unfairly relies almost entirely on the United States enrages the global order, Washington establishment, the military-industrial complex, and basically every talking head in the media. They go absolutely berserk when Trump talks about NATO, when Trump calls out NATO. On the other hand, tax-paying Americans actually love this, a politician that calls out our country's moochers, while the rest let our allies walk all over us. As a nation $34 trillion in debt, this is the kind of reality check politics that this country really needs. They just don't want to give it to you. Currently, only 11 out of 31 countries in NATO meet their defense spending obligation, which means we have to spend far more here domestically on defense to keep the West safe. When Trump first started blasting NATO, even fewer paid their fair share. And over the weekend, Trump, eyeing a return to the White House, blasted the coalition again on Saturday. Take a listen.
They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
Now, most of us realize what this is, right? This is a businessman lighting a fire under NATO, seeing something he doesn't like in the numbers and trying to change it. Comments like this motivate nations who've gotten very comfortable spending less and less on their own national defense. Comfortable knowing if they get into a fight in the schoolyard, their big brother is Mike Tyson. The U.S. spends close to $1 trillion a year on defense. It is an ungodly amount of money. And with that money, we defend the entire West, not just ourselves, including many countries that would spend far more and be forced to spend far more if they weren't protected by us. Everyone in Washington ignores this because most of them benefit from a larger military-industrial complex and more spending. The more money Washington spends, the better everybody in Washington does. And that's exactly the problem with Washington. Liz Cheney's dramatic response to Trump's comments: no sane American president would encourage Putin to attack our NATO allies. And we saw more of the same from the usual suspects.
You know, it's almost unbelievable. It's an insanity to say that, because that is the existential crisis that the world faces right now.
He's telling us that. Here he's telling us he's going to encourage Vladimir Putin, a former Russian, a Soviet enemy, Vladimir Putin, to just take over not only NATO, but other, not only Ukraine, but other NATO countries.
And just to speak in very specific terms, that's talking about like World War III at that point. If you're talking about opening the door for Russia to go into Poland, Moldova, anywhere else, that becomes our third world war.
Yeah.
Brilliant analysis, as it always is. Does anyone actually believe that Trump was really inviting an attack by Russia on the West? Why is it the establishment in this country has no problem with a defense treaty made up of largely delinquent members? No problem with that at all. They never talk about it. But they absolutely lose it when somebody calls it out and makes an effort to improve it. And why is our country being run by people that have made us a doormat for wealthy nations like Spain, which can barely muster 1% of GDP to spend on its military while napping all afternoon, while we spend more than triple that ratio? The head of the European Council called Trump's comments reckless. What's reckless are large countries like Germany, France, and Italy slighting this coalition for decades. And now many are rapidly increasing defense spending since Trump embarrassed NATO publicly back in 2018, with Jens Stoltenberg, the head of NATO, sitting right across the table waiting for his croissant at a NATO breakfast.
Protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries. Germany is just paying a little bit over 1%, whereas the United States, in actual numbers, is paying 4.2%. of a much larger GDP. So I think that's inappropriate also. Now this has been going on for decades. This has been brought up by other presidents, but other presidents never did anything about it because I don't think they understood it or they just didn't want to get involved. But I have to bring it up because I think it's very unfair to our country. It's very unfair to our taxpayer.
That was a great moment for the West, if you can believe it. For example, since that morning, Germany has increased defense spending by about $15 billion every single year. That's a lot of money. And that's just one country. Greece and Poland also dramatically increasing their funding, the Italians as well, and other countries all climbing up closer to that 2%. They were humiliated by that. The sophisticated Western powers flexing their might against the bad actors of the world. There's now more money in defense in NATO. That coalition is now much stronger. There's a response to tough talk. It worked. That does work. They don't care that it works, but it works. Here's how the media sounded the day after Trump's NATO breakfast rant.
The president picks a fight with NATO, alienating Democratic allies.
The president kicked things off this morning by publicly insulting America's most powerful European ally.
He has very combative language. Confrontation on the world stage. Stunning, yes, but not surprising.
All that fury. And inside Washington, it was even worse. All of that anger. And they were wrong. They're always wrong. And they're wrong today. From the New York Times, favoring foes over friends. Trump threatens to upend international order. Oh, my word. We can't elect him. He's terrifying. An outburst by Trump on NATO may push Europe to go it alone. Two different New York Times headlines. It's like that all over the place. Flip on your computer, Google it. You'll see it all. Priceless, and they'll never learn, and they'll never apologize either. Clearer heads understand exactly what this is. They understand exactly what he's doing, why he said what he said on Saturday. That's an announcement to the rest of the world. He's coming back into power, at least the polls indicate that at this point. Get it in order. Get it together. Because we do have a lot of problems internationally. Because the last three years of Joe Biden have been a disaster. So now the world's on fire. And he's saying, don't be coming to me if you're paying 1.2% of GDP on NATO. Don't do it. Listen to Marco Rubio. He explains exactly what this is.
I have zero concern because he's been president before. I know exactly what he has done and will do with the NATO alliance. But there has to be an alliance. It's not America's defense with a bunch of small junior partners.